And the crazy making, Mesha, got so intense, I definitely developed Stockholm syndrome. I felt like I was going crazy. I was having panic attacks. I couldn't figure out why, because nothing in my life was intersecting. It was like parallel tracks. Like there's this abuse track, and then there's this other track of panic and anxiety and increased sickness and illnesses, but they never intersected. My brain had completely split off in order to survive what was happening in my home, reporting that this relationship needs to stay intact. Pillars in the community, and we're that quintessential couple, and my business grew and it was quite large, and we employed all these people, and la 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 la. And it was survival at home. Survival.
Welcome to Silent No Longer, where your past is a chapter and not the whole book. I'm Mesha, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a safe, judgment-free space for anyone who has lived through toxic or abusive relationships and is ready to heal. I know what it's like to feel trapped, unheard, and unseen. Through faith and healing, I found my way forward, and now my purpose is to help others do the same. Here we share real stories of resiliency, growth, and transformation from people who have walked through trauma and come out stronger. My hope is that you'll be reminded that you are not alone, your past does not define you, and healing is possible. If you're ready to take the next step, you can learn more in my book, Behind Closed Doors, or schedule a free clarity call with me. Today on Silent No Longer, I'm joined by Christine, a survivor whose story speaks to both the depths of violence and the power of healing. Christine lived through a relationship so dangerous that she was forced to relocate and change her name, even keeping her whereabouts hidden from family for her own safety. Today, Christine is no longer living in fear. She is courageously sharing her story and now works with Abuse Recovery Ministry Services, helping others find hope, safety, and healing after abuse. Her journey is a powerful reminder that no matter how dark the past, freedom and purpose are possible. Thank you for being here today. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Thank you for having me, Mesha. I'm excited to be here.
You want to just start out by telling a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. It's quite a story. And I say that knowing that everyone has a story. The details and the specifics of what we walk through when we are in an abusive relationship and coming out of an abusive relationship are different and yet so very similar. And, in my case, I was married young, which was surprising to me because I grew up thinking I'm not going to get married till my late 20s or early 30s, and I have so much to do. But I met a man who I thought, Mesha, would be the perfect match, that we could do some really incredible things together. He was charismatic. The charisma oozed out of him. I was in my early 20s. I had a little business going that was having some success. So being an entrepreneur, I was looking to grow my business, not for a relationship, but I met this man who seemed to support everything I did, wasn't intimidated by me, seemingly was a cheerleader at first. And so it was a whirlwind. I I grew up in a family where my parents had and have a very incredible relationship. My father has always been so honoring of my mother, and my mother has always been so honoring of my father. Not a perfect family, of course, but they're just the respect that they have and how they would work through conflict gave me an example of what a relationship should look like. So when I meet this gentleman, I am swept off my feet. He pulled out all the stops because I'm busy. I'm building my business. I don't have time. But he quickly lured me in, and he seemed to add to my life. And I thought, oh my goodness, we really could bring our talents together, and God might have something really special for our relationship, and we could be really impactful for God's kingdom. Faith is the center part of my life, and this seemed to be the perfect match. So between when we met to when we were married was 6 months. The stories I could tell about what I learned from knowing someone for 6 months. I didn't know anything. I didn't come from a family where there was abuse in it. So the pressure to get married and start immediately, I took as, oh, this person really sees me and wants to be part of my life. So I said yes, and it was awful from from the honeymoon. Awful. I look back and I think, was it a bait and switch situation? In some ways, yes. Now that I am educated and have learned things, I could see that the signs were there, but I had no way to interpret them.
Mhm.
You're seeing sign language. If someone's performing sign language, ALS, and you don't know it, you don't know what to do with it. And that was the situation. So we get married, and it it was it was disastrous. He went full, I mean, I would say he really just unleashed his true personality. He was a rageaholic, and it started on the honeymoon and never stopped. So I was married 8.5 years. And during that 8.5 years, of course, there is many, 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 many incidences and specific trauma events or situations where I was trying to avert a crisis or something that could be physically dangerous. It was already psychologically and emotionally dangerous. But things really shifted when I got pregnant. So the first couple years, I felt like I had a little bit of grit and a little bit of fight in me that, hey, I'm not going to be treated this way. And so
Mhm.
I would push back to the point I knew I could without getting too hurt or hurt in a way where I might not come back from it. Um, and the whole time, Misha, I'm thinking this is wrong. I don't think this is right. But I also came from a family where if you committed to being married, you worked through it. And I wanted to honor my commitments. I really believed what I was reading in the Word of God, though I was reading some of it incorrectly. Um, and so I just stayed and eventually got to a point where I didn't think there was a way out. And the people that I went to look for help and guidance told me, well, this is the person you picked, and now you have to live with it. So the culture around me that I was surrounded with was reinforcing the fact that I needed to stay and survive in this violent relationship. And I have to be honest, Misha, I never called it domestic violence or abuse or violent or any of those things till after I went through
Mhm.
my separation and divorce and got quite a bit of healing. I could not admit to myself that that's a relationship I was in. But when I
Mhm.
got pregnant, it just got worse, which now I know is very common. But I thought maybe that would shift our family. It wasn't an intentional pregnancy. He was very upset about it. So I felt like I was a single mom. And I withdrew though, because I went into this protective mode that I need to survive. And I had two children back to back. I have two incredible daughters. They're 12 months apart, both born in
Mhm.
June, both had the same due date. That's weird. But it changed me. I didn't have the like, okay, I can do this and I'm going to stand up for myself. It was, how do I protect myself? How do I protect my children? And the crazy making, Misha, got so intense. I definitely developed Stockholm syndrome, became
Mhm.
trauma bonded. Uh, I felt like I was going crazy. I was having panic attacks, and I couldn't figure out why, because nothing in my life was intersecting. It was like parallel tracks. Like there's this abuse track, and then there's this other track of panic and anxiety and increased sickness and illnesses, but they never intersected. My brain had completely split off in order to survive what was happening in my home, and that my family and my church culture, everyone was kind of, even though they didn't know the details, supporting that this relationship needs to stay intact. So
Hmm.
we were pillars in the community, and we're that quintessential couple, and my business grew and it was quite large, and we employed all these people, and la 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 la. And it was s- survival at home. Survival. So fast forward 8.5 years of being married, God brought someone into my life who could help me, a trauma therapist. And I started seeing a trauma therapist because of panic attacks. I couldn't figure out how I could go into a board meeting and make these m- massive business decisions. And then at night, I'm locked in a closet and I'm having a panic attack. And I just felt like I'm two people. Well, I was two people,
Mhm.
but never saw the cause and effect of that situation. So when I started seeing this trauma therapist, I thought it was me. I went 17 months before I ever mentioned anything about my relationship. I found
Wow.
out later. My therapist said later to me that she had asked and tried to find an entry point, but I always took the conversation in another direction. My system, my body, my psyche, I was not ready to deal with that. So 17 months of work and feeling safe. Um, and then I started to talk. And there's a lot of the story there we can get into at some point if we want to or not. But ultimately, what resulted in it was God brought me someone to support me. And then he brought me an organization, Arms, to support me and teach me what he really says in his word, and that I have value, and I took vows in sickness and in health, not in abuse and terror and death.
Mhm.
And through that, the Lord walked me out of a relationship. I always thought the miracle I was praying for would come in the restoration of the marriage.
Mhm.
I never realized that the miracle would be walking me out and walking my children out.
Yeah.
And so
Oh.
the state I was living in moved me confidentially, actually to San Diego is where I live now. We were confidentially moved to another state. Our names were changed. The protective order is quite extensive, and for the rest of my life, his life, um, it doesn't always work out that way for other people. But due to what unfolded during the season of trying to actually separate was
Mhm.
so extreme, that the court saw it, and I'm grateful. But I was in hiding. I lived in another state and I moved to a town. I didn't know anyone. Had no connections at all, no business, nothing. Me and my children were 5 and 6 at the time when we were finally moved, and I I was just so empty and so
Mhm.
lost and so nothing with I had no identity. I had no family. Couldn't tell them, couldn't tell anyone where I was, no friends, no name, to lean into. So, God really had to rebuild me, but he
Yeah.
has. That was 12 years ago now, since he moved me or brought me out. Yeah. So highlights of my story, right? There's lots of
Yeah.
nitty-gritty that we could get into, but that was, quite a season, and then it's been a healing journey ever since, which I know you're familiar with because
Mhm.
you've been on your own healing journey, and you're talking to people regularly who are on their healing journey.
Mhm. Yeah, healing is definitely every day. You learn something about yourself every single day. Um, but yeah, I love your story, and you just keep fighting and you never give up.
Mhm.
And it's just amazing just hearing where you were and where you are now. It's just I don't know, it's just so amazing. So heartwarming, and I love it.
I I pray that all the time that my story, if God called me to share it, that it would bring hope to people, that it
Mhm.
wouldn't just be another, "Oh, I can relate to that." That's good, we connect with people in relating, but that there would be
Mhm.
something that would breathe life into others, that it wouldn't just be about the destruction. Because if people met when they meet me today, most people don't know my story. I've only
Mhm.
recently started to share it, as in the last 4 or 5 months.
Oh,
They
wow.
would never know, and it's
Mm,
not because I'm fake or wearing a mask, it's because I don't smell like smoke. I
yeah.
went through the fire and did the work and the healing, and God has given me this beautiful life that is filled with all the ups and downs life brings for sure,
Mhm.
but is healthier, is so much healthier.
Well, I'm really glad that you found the people to help you out because I too was in the place and I mean, um, like my marriage was more of psychological,
Mm,
in that kind of a toxic way. It wasn't harmful physically or anything. But I was used to that because I grew up around it. I could handle it, but I saw very quickly my kids couldn't handle it. But I prayed and prayed and prayed for 7 years for my marriage because I thought you weren't supposed to get a divorce. So I was gonna do everything I could, and, what are you supposed to do? Pray. Well, that wasn't working, so I stopped praying for our marriage, and I started praying for myself, and that's when everything changed.
mm.
So, yeah.
Yep. Yes, it is true. It goes back to the miracle. We think the miracle is going to be in the marriage. And
Mhm.
often it is for people. They're praying over their marriage for one thing or another,
Yeah.
and it is. But that's because the person on the other side
Mhm.
chose to change, chose to do the work, chose to
Yep.
face reality. I always knew that intellectually, Misha. Walking through it was different though, going, I really cannot control another person.
Mm-mm.
And I didn't realize that I had picked up unhealthy behaviors being in the relationship out of survival. So
Mhm.
I would do this dance to try to really the goal was to get an end result, right? So to manipulate and control most of the time to keep myself safe and to keep my kids safe. It was really about safety in our family. Um, but I was like placating and not being honest at times with whatever was going on in order to control his behavior because I didn't want the wrath of it. Problem is when we learn habits, we're not very good at keeping them in one lane with one person.
Mhm.
So I had to take a look at my life and go, what are the things that I took on that are not me, that shouldn't be me, that are behaviors and patterns that really need to be addressed and flushed out. And I had to do some work too because I had these fear based responses. Um, I didn't trust anyone. There was
Mhm.
things I was controlling with. So I didn't want to show up in other relationships, not just romantic relationships. I mean, any relationship with that stain and that taint.
Mhm.
And I certainly didn't want to pick someone else who was the same as my
Yeah.
husband. And that does happen a lot. I've seen it. So I chose to like step back
Mm.
and work on myself because I was afraid of my poor decision making. Oh my gosh, I am not qualified right now.
Oh goodness, yes.
Like, no, no, no. Remove me from the equation.
Yeah. That's so funny. I say that all the time. I was like, people ask me all the time, "Are you ready to date?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, I'm not against it." They're like, "Well, you ever think you're gonna be in a relationship again?" I'm like, I mean, I hope so one day, because it
Mhm.
is. I mean, I've only been divorced for like a year and a half now, and I was in a bad relationship right before my marriage. So yeah, I'm not in a big hurry to jump into something again. I mean, I think it would be nice to experience love
Mm.
for the first time, um, but I don't know what that looks like because 'cause I'm so used to being manipulated. Because I was love bombed with my marriage at the beginning, and before in the rest of my life, I had never had anybody pay attention to me, so he love bombed me, and
What?
then he didn't want anything to do with me after our marriage, and we were married for 9 years, and it was so bad to the point where we weren't even in the same room together, ever.
Mhm.
I mean, people didn't even know that we were married because we were never together. So when I got a divorce, people were like, "What? You were married? I didn't know you were married." Like,
Wow.
that's how bad it was.
Wow.
And, but then I also just realized the best way not to have arguments in our relationship was just not to talk. So I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to have a conversation with people. I was scared to have a conversation with people. Um, I did meet a friend who loves to talk, and we're still friends, but he talks all the time, and we've been friends for a year, and I still get nervous about talking to him just because it's like, how much do you really wanna open up to somebody, you know? That scares me.
Sure.
I don't
Sure.
wanna give too much, and if you watch my podcast from the beginning to now, I open up a lot more now because at the beginning, I'm like, "I don't want anybody to know anything about me. I just wanna hear about everybody else's story." You just give the bare minimum of what you want to know, but that's not what it's about. It's about me telling my story too, so
Yes. Yes. Well, you said something interesting about, okay, you were love bombed. I would not have known what that term was. I didn't know what that term was
I
until
didn't either.
I went through the abuse program, a recovery program through ARMS called Her Journey.
Mhm.
So, but I experienced the same thing. How did that show up for you? Or maybe for listeners who couldn't define what being love bombed is?
Um, Well, I'm going to call it love bombing. I'm not sure if that's exactly what he was intended to it to be, but that's what I'm gonna call it because to me, love bombing is when somebody is doing all this stuff to make you feel special, but as soon as a certain point in your relationship, they don't do anything anymore. So that's why I call it love bombing. But I mean, he would buy me gifts all the time. He'd bring me my favorite candies and my pops to work if I was having a bad day. He would watch the kids. He would come over and make me dinner while I was doing my homework. He would clean my house, like all this stuff for me to relieve pressure in my life because I was a single mom to 4 little kids, going to school full time, working 14, 16 hours a day. Like I was busy and I was so tired. And he would just do all this stuff for me, and he was always buying me things. Okay, but then we got engaged, and things shifted a little bit, and and we were friends for a while before this. So I kinda knew how he was just by listening to him talk about, like, other relationships and things, but I was like, "Oh, he's not gonna be like that with me."
Mhm.
Right? It had to have been all their fault.
Yeah.
No, I know now if I ever have that thought in my head, just to run. Just don't or just be friends. Don't just don't go any further. But, um
Mm,
but yeah, so, I mean, that's what it was, and then we got engaged and things shifted. But I said it was stress because now he's working on the road, only home 1 weekend of the month. We're talking about getting married. I'm planning the whole wedding, which it was just a small little thing. I'm having to go through the courts so I can move out of state 'cause we're getting ready to move out of state and just all the logistics with, my kids and their dad and stuff, and it was just a lot, so I'm like I can remember this one time I was crying on the bathroom floor because, everything that was going on and how he was treating me during this time, and I was like, "Why am I gonna marry him if he's making me feel this way?" But also felt like there was so much going on in my life I didn't really have a choice, and it would get better once we got moved and we weren't under so much stress. And it
mhm,
did. We did do good for a while, but he was on the road. I only see him 1 weekend out of the month. I basically was back to being pretty much a single mom. If we got into an argument, I could just hang up and, things were fine. I did my own thing. He did his own thing until he got off the road like 3 years later. And that's when everything went downhill because now we're living together and
oh,
he wanted to take over, and he was upset because I was being controlling, but I wasn't being controlling, we already had a way life was.
right. Mm,
So, he wanted to be in with the life, but we've already been doing this for 3 years.
mhm,
And then he wanted to take complete control over the kids, and with my kids, I'm big mama bear, like, "Don't mess with my kids," you know? If I don't like something, no, that's not the way it's gonna be. But I did compromise in a lot of ways, but he was just like, "You're not compromising," and I was like, "I am compromising," but he just wanted full control, and I didn't like what his full control looked like, and I did give it to him once. It was not very long because all hell broke out. Like,
mm,
all hell broke out, and I was like, "Nope." So, I went back to, like, "No, you can't do this," "That's too much. They don't need to be treated like that," and it was just it was bad. I mean, I don't know. But I didn't know anything else different in life.
yeah.
My mom I grew up with her in one toxic relationship and they were violent. So I'm like, well, at least nobody's hitting anybody, but all the emotional abuse, the manipulation, like the thing that would really bother me the most was he would ask my son a question and then he would try answering him and he would cut him off and be like, no, that's not what I want to hear. And it would make me mad. I'm like, well, then tell him what you want to hear if you're just going to yell at him. And then I would tell my son, like, just don't say anything. Well, that just made it worse. So then the kids just slowly started staying in their rooms and they would never come out. And eventually that's what life was. Everybody stayed in their room or they weren't home.
Mm. It really does affect the whole family. Abuse
Mhm.
directed or started towards one person never stays that way.
Mhm.
Other people in the family, they are experiencing it too because we are who we are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so an abuser might target the abuse more on one person, but if they have other people around, like children, those children are
Mhm.
going to be on the receiving end of that at some point.
Yeah.
I remember a specific incident in my home. My daughters were 3 and 4, and I knew the patterns. I could tell when he was getting spun up, and so I would move to a different part of the house. I had come home, or he had come home. I think I was home with the girls, and he had come home, and, he was just full steam and in not a good place. And I was with my daughters in the kitchen. They were eating some food, and I could tell this was gonna be bad. So I moved into the garage because I knew he would follow me.
Mhm.
That was I mean, he was gonna follow me, and he followed me everywhere. Whenever he wanted, there was no sacred space, there was no boundaries, was no respecting of if you're in here changing or taking a shower, he was gonna be wherever he wanted to be.
Mhm.
And so I went to the garage to pull him out of the kitchen so the door could shut, and he sure enough followed me in there and started up, um, and then my daughters came in to check on us, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So then I moved again, but I couldn't get out of the kitchen to another spot quick enough, and they were hiding behind the kitchen island, and I remember thinking, oh my goodness. I had up to that point done I think, a really good job protecting them. They were so little. Usually was in another space and they wouldn't
Mhm.
see it, wouldn't hear it, didn't understand because of their age.
Mm.
But I saw I couldn't protect them in this moment and they're hiding. And I'm thinking, oh, this is the start. This is the start of a new phase of what's going to happen. And it was critical timing because it's when I had just started talking to my therapist about things that were going on in my marriage, coming to terms with what the type of relationship I was living in.
Mhm.
And it was a catalyst towards getting stronger more quickly. That I need to figure out where my line is and my boundaries are quickly. And
Mhm.
I was recommended through therapy to attend. This is how I found ARMS, Abuse Recovery Ministry and Services. We call it ARMS. But they sent me to their website, and I went to the website, it's abuserecovery.org, and they have a program. They had a program and they have the program, and it's called Her Journey, and it's for women who are in or have come out of doesn't matter where you're at in your abuse recovery journey. It's a free program. Get this, it's free. They have locations all over the country, and now you can do it on Zoom. At the time, 12 years ago, it wasn't on Zoom. I was so embarrassed, Misha, about the situation I was in. I felt like it said something about me and how could I be here? But I'm this strong woman and you know, oh my
Mhm.
I drove 2.5 hours to a group because I didn't want to go someplace nearby in case I knew someone. I was mortified. And I went in thinking, I'm not really in this situation. I'm just gaining tools because my marriage is rough. I
Yeah.
mean, there was parts of me that would admit and other parts that were in complete denial. So I would go into this group and I would just sit there and the program is incredible. And it was for me because it taught me things about abuse I didn't know, things about recovery that I needed, the truth of who God says I am, not scripture
Mhm.
manipulated, which I was very used to. And over time, I started absorbing and the walls came down. I started acknowledging the situation I was in. It was nice because it wasn't talk therapy. I wasn't there sharing every week all these horrific things that I'd been through or was going through. I was listening and learning, and then there was a little bit of sharing and prayer at the end if people wanted to participate in that because people of all faiths were there. But if I had had to pay for the program, I could have afforded to pay for the program because I had a business at that time. But if I had had to pay, I never would have gone because
Mhm.
the fact that I would have had to pay would have I would have had to admit to myself at the onset, I'm paying for this because I need it. And there is no way I would have done that.
Yeah.
I attended week after week after week, and it did take me a long time. I am sometimes a slow learner.
Mm.
I'm slow. So I didn't admit for 8 months. It took me 8 months before I would finally admit that, "Oh, I am in an abusive relationship." But I got there, and
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for the therapist and for the group because I needed it. It wasn't someone couldn't tell me, "This is your situation," and then I would agree. In fact, this is hilarious. When I went to our marriage counselors, because we were in marriage counseling, which, as you know, is detrimental when you're in an abusive relationship, but I didn't know I was in an abusive relationship. I went one time without him. He wouldn't come. I don't remember what happened. There was always something. He often would storm out and leave me, just leave
Mm.
me there. So there was all these signs, but I went without him and this couple to our marriage counseling, and this couple gave me the sheet of paper and they said, "Okay, we want you to check off everything here that's true about your marriage." So I'm looking at this list. It's filled with 25 items. I checked 24 of them. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I have so far to go. I feel like I can't make any progress." I'm just I'm strung out because there's all these things wrong, all these things on this piece of paper, which were not good, were true about my marriage. So they so sweetly, they have a piece of paper and they so sweetly both look at me and the wife says, "Christine, this is a domestic violence test."
Mm.
And you could have heard a pin drop. I said nothing for a solid 10 seconds. And then my knee jerk response was, "No, it's not." And I grabbed the paper and pulled it back. It seems so ridiculous now. "I'm going to tell you it's not." I was like, "Oh, no, no, it's not." And I took the paper back. Like I, that was the first time someone had ever used the words abuse, domestic violence at all for me.
Mhm.
Um, then I went back and talked to my counselor. "Can you believe what happened? They told me I'm in an abusive relationship." My trauma therapist, who of
Yeah.
course had seen the signs and known the whole time.
Yeah.
She was so wonderful. But both of those things. So they said, "Hey, there's other people like you. Go to get support." And I needed more than my 1 hour a week of counseling. And some people can't even afford counseling. I was so grateful that I could do that. And because I was going for my own personal traumas and issues, my husband at the time was okay with it. Like, "Oh yes, you go fix yourself and make yourself better because if you're better, our relationship won't be this way." So he was very supportive at first of me going because he wasn't in counseling. He's like, "She's the one with the issues."
Mhm.
But the group, hearing other people, learning about abuse, being taught real truth, and then where my responsibility was, not to control him, but responsibility for myself and for my
Mhm.
8 months later, I was like, "Okay, wow, I admit it, Lord. Now what do I do?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. You said something else earlier when you were talking about love bombing too that kind of caught my attention. I don't know if you experienced this with the psychological abuse and emotional abuse. You probably did, where we wonder what's true and not true. It's like,
Yes,
am I crazy or are you crazy?
no, I can remember, like, yesterday, there was this one time, I had a friend from, like, well, we've known each other our entire lives, and every once in a, I don't know, 6 months to a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, we would check in on each other and be like, "Hey, how's life? Still alive?" Blah, blah, that was literally it. And this one time, this was probably, like, the last, I wanna say, 3 years of our marriage. He had checked in and said, "Hey, still alive? How you doing?" And I was like, "I think I'm crazy." And he's like, "What? What do you mean you think you're crazy?" I was like, "I literally think I'm crazy."
Mhm,
And he's
mhm.
like, "You're not crazy." I was like, "No, I really do think I'm crazy. I don't understand anything that's happening." And after that, I started recording all of our conversations, and that's when I was like, "Oh, I'm not crazy. This is how I remember it." But, I mean, you sit there and you have a conversation for, like, 2 hours, and it's just, I don't know. I couldn't even explain the conversations, honestly. It
Mm-hmm.
just leaves you like, "What was that? What
Mm-hmm.
happened?"
Mm-hmm.
And then at the
Completely.
end, you're just left with feeling like you're crazy.
Yeah. It completely throws off your equilibrium.
Mhm.
You're, we walk on the earth and there's gravity and it grounds us. And you feel sort of, I always described it like I was in a dryer, just getting tossed around. Like,
Mhm.
what is up and down? What is right? What is true? And then when there's love bombing, so I experienced lots of love bombing prior to the wedding day, and then I experienced lots of love bombing in the makeup part of the cycle.
Mm.
Lots and very, very extravagant. So to the outside world, I mean, he wouldn't just show up at my office with flowers. He would show up in my office with 6-foot tall roses imported from South America.
Oh,
It was
wow.
so elaborate. So you've got all these other women, and again, he's got a lot of charisma. Like, oh my gosh, if only my husband would do that. Like, look at how he dotes on you and loves you. And it was all done publicly. All the
Mhm.
doting was very public. And then
Mhm.
the rage was private. So I started when I was starting to accept the situation and see the truth, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. I always thought knowing the truth would be like, oh, I know the truth. This is great. Not that knowing the truth was going to be hard and mean a long road ahead. I'm like, wait, what kind of truth? What kind of truth is this?
Yeah. What am I supposed to do with this now?
I know.
How long is this gonna take?
So I started to write out what love is in Corinthians. Love is patient. Love is kind. It goes through the different things. Love is not self-seeking. And so I took that chapter. I actually got this from my recovery group, Her Journey at Arms. They went through the, the love chapter and what it was and what it meant. And so at
Mhm.
home, I would go, okay, what is love? And I would write down the things that he was doing or had done and then determine, is this in the love box or not? Kind of felt like I was in elementary school. Where do
Mhm.
you place this sentence, in this box or this box? But I had to do that because I was so psychologically confused. There was so much crazy making for so long and the brainwashing and all the things. How did I know what was true and what wasn't? And I would hear in Her Journey class truth. And then I would go home and go, oh, maybe they're not right or I'm not right. Or I was constantly second guessing myself, what reality was. So that's how I grounded myself in reality, like grounding my feet to the ground. It was my gravity. And then, okay, love is kind. Here's the situation. Was this kind? Because I knew
Mhm.
what was kind and not kind if I could make an assessment just based on that one thing. But based on my entire relationship, I could not. And
Yeah.
then I would, if I wasn't sure, I would say, okay, if I did this to someone, if my children did, if my coworker did this and this to another coworker or my employee, and then if it wasn't about me, then sometimes I could go, oh, and I would be able to see it. So I always found a way to make sure that I was seeing it correctly, but I had the
Mhm.
safety net of running another person or couple through the scenario to determine because I didn't trust myself. And I would do it all the time. I would take the situations or if something was happening and I go, okay, I'm going to go write this down. And then I would box it to help
Mm.
myself be grounded. And it was a massive tool that God gave me, this kind of idea to do this, to see what was the truth consistently and not torture my brain
Mhm.
trying to decide, am I interpreting this right? Or maybe it is me. And I do have this tendency, of course, probably like you too. He told me all the things that were wrong with me all the time. So I did believe that most everything was my fault and that
Mhm.
if I could behave differently, then he would behave differently. You have 4 children. Could you imagine telling that to our children? Like, hey, if your brother or sister behaved differently, then you wouldn't act like that. So hang on to it till they change. I mean, that's not how we teach our kids, right? We teach them, it doesn't matter how your brother treats you or your sister. You're responsible for your own actions.
Mhm.
But in my relationship, it wasn't that way. It was, oh, he's treating me this way because I'm doing these things. So I need to change first. Well, no, we're responsible for ourselves. So
Mm.
anyway.
I really like how you broke that down. I went to that same chapter, but for different reasons. So, when I was a kid, I was molested by my cousin, and he kinda Stockholm syndrome me into thinking that I loved him and that we were gonna be together forever and, like, run away together and, like, all the things. It's think about it now, and I'm just like, "How did that even ever happen?" But, because of that, I was under the impression that if anybody loved you, they had to be some sort of sexually to you. And my husband was addicted to porn, so he never touched me, and then when he did, it was my fault. Everything sucked and it was all my fault. And I'm like, "No, it's because you're so used to watching porn, you can't
Mm,
have sex with me anymore."
right.
So I wanted him to get help for that, but he wouldn't do it. But, I had to like, I can remember just crying one night and just because all my life I was like, "Why does nobody love me?" You know? So I was praying about it to God one time, and I got the Bible out, and I was looking up that. I'm like, "What is love? What is love?" Because God told me that He would teach me what love was.
Mhm,
Just let Him love me, and He would teach me. So
mhm,
I went to all those same things. And then how you said that you were writing things down so you could remember them, I started doing that same thing the last year of my marriage. Every single time something would happen, I'd be like, "What?" And it's so funny because I'd write them down in my notes, and then I had it locked. It's still there, but I can't figure out the password. It's so funny. I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess that's a chapter closed if I can't get into it," you know? But, yeah, I had to do that too because I had to remember, like, this did happen.
mhm,
Or this did happen like that.
mhm.
Because every single time you have a conversation, it's like, "Oh, but that didn't happen. This is how it did." Or can you give me exact day or time or when I said this or when I did that? I hated that. I'm like,
Mhm.
"No, I can't." But it
Right.
did happen, you know?
Uh-huh.
I don't know, but I didn't really know that I was in an abusive relationship, and after being on the podcast listening to a lot of people, myself, I and this is just something that I realized recently. I feel bad for calling it abuse. I know there's different types of abuse. Domestic violence is just abuse straight across the board, but there's different types. But
Sure.
I don't know what it is stuck in my head that like the physical somebody hitting you or threatening you or almost, whatever. That is a stronger abuse in my head, and I think it's because that was my limit and that's what I knew what it was when I was younger.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah, 'cause I grew up around all kinds of abuse growing up, and I'm just like, "If anybody ever lays their hands on me, we're done." Like, I didn't know the rest of it was abuse,
Right. Right.
actually, until after I got a divorce and I watched that show Made on Netflix. That was the eye-opening for me.
Wow. Wow. I
So
I wouldn't have known other that there was more abuse than physical abuse until because we need language, right? We have to be
mhm,
taught. We need language for it.
yeah,
I learned it in her journey, my recovery program, because they teach eight kinds of abuse. Psychological, usually women, and I would say from my own experience too, is the worst because it's
mhm,
what throws you off balance. But
uh-huh,
of course, there's the physical abuse, there's the sexual abuse, there's financial abuse, there's pet abuse or animal abuse. There
mhm,
is spiritual abuse, which kept me stuck because of my faith.
mhm, yep,
That's the
me
one
too,
that actually kept me there.
mhm,
There's verbal abuse and there's property abuse. And learning the different categories and then what falls into those categories, that's why my piece of paper was checked. That's why I checked every box when they gave it to me because it was happening in every area. But I didn't, when I was reading this paper and checking it off, I just thought these aren't good things or we have something to work on. I did not know that there was such a thing as pet abuse or property abuse or, I mean, a sexual abuse. Yeah, I kind of knew what that one was, but I
mhm,
didn't know the other was spiritual abuse. So I didn't recognize it even when I was reading it, checking it as abuse. I'm like, oh yeah, that just happens. No language for it, no definition for it. And learning it brings so much freedom because then you can
yeah,
You can call it what it is, and we can name the truth, and then we can make a plan, or God gives us direction so we don't have to stay stuck in it.
Mhm.
Sure, like you, I did not want this for my children. I didn't
Mhm.
want this for my children, but I knew enough about family lines to know that abuse is a learned behavior, and I have learned to receive this.
Mhm.
People learn to give it, which
Mhm.
means it can be unlearned, and people do
Yeah.
unlearn it. And I don't want my children to learn to receive it or
Yeah.
learn from their father on how to give it, because they're going to be one or the other unless they choose not to be. I think there's a propensity in all of us in our sinful human nature that we need control and dominance, or we want avoidance. And we, we kind of get set up at times to be on one end or the other for different reasons in our life. And we have to choose not to be that person, to move into who God has us to be and to be healthy and to bring life to people.
Yeah.
But I didn't know, just like you, I no idea. What is this?
Mm.
Oh, this is crazy making. And it has a name.
Mhm. Yeah, I had no idea. I just thought it was normal, and I told my kids that. I was like, "I'm really sorry that you guys grew up like this. Never intended my kids to ever have a life like this, but I thought it was normal. I didn't think there was anything wrong with it, and I'm really sorry, but
Mhm,
it's all I can really do?
mhm,
I can't go back and change it." So, and as far as, my husband, when we got our divorce, we told the family together, and he told the kids, he's like, that it was his fault because he has a lot of trauma in him and he doesn't wanna deal with it. And because I told him, I was like, "We need to tell the kids." And I was so nervous about what he was gonna say. I
mhm,
was all prepared for it to come back on me. And he said that, and it threw me off balance. I was not expecting it. But the kids already knew it. They
mhm,
already knew that he had, a lot of healing he needed to do, and he had a lot of
mhm,
trauma in him, but he just didn't wanna face it.
mhm,
So,
mhm. Wow, wow.
but
And
yeah.
have your children, have they started to work through that, that firsthand and secondhand abuse, or how are they doing? How is that being a mom trying to parent children through that?
Well, after he moved out, we all held each other accountable, especially how we were talking to one another.
Mm,
And that's still a little bit I mean, it doesn't come up as much anymore, but before we were just, like, snapping at each other and screaming at one another, not even realizing we were doing
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And my son, bless his heart, he's the sweetest kid ever, and I feel like he's the most in tune on what's going on and level-headed and calm one, that he just looks at you and he's like, "Hey, you're yelling. You don't need to yell. Wha there's nothing happening. Just take a breath, calm down, and try saying it again." And I was like, "What? I'm not yelling? Like, what's he talking about?" But we
Mhm,
were just so used to being, and it's not just like being loud yelling. It was like lashing out type yelling because
mhm.
we were just so used to it.
Yeah. So you had something you needed to unlearn, and you
Mhm.
and you did it as a family,
Yeah.
unlearned it
We've got
together.
we still have a lot to work on.
Yeah.
Um, I've talked to my kids about doing therapy, but they don't wanna do it, and I'm just like, "If they don't wanna do it, is it gonna be helpful?" And I kinda struggle in that area.
Mm,
Um, I mean, 2 of them are adults now, but well, 3 of them technically. Mm, I don't know. The healing process with kids is tricky. It really is. They've come a long way. I think they've learned a lot, but do I feel like they probably need a lot more help? Yes.
mhm.
But I don't think that you get anything out of therapy if you don't apply it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then you have to find the right type of therapist and
yeah.
I struggle because everybody's like, "Your kids should be in therapy." I'm like, "I know this. I've talked to them about it. I do. I really do know this."
Mhm,
But at the same point, where are they gonna get the therapy? Who's going to do it for them? How are they going to get there? Are they going to participate? All those things. I mean, I know to me, it sounds like a lot of excuses, but I want my kids to actually do the work and want to do the work and want to understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also know that when you go through healing, it's going to bring things up. So I kind of want them to be in a semi good place before they start it, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I mean, I think they're all doing pretty good right now. My son's biggest thing is um he's learning because he forgot a lot of the stuff. And being around other people, he's like, I don't understand why this person makes me so angry. Like, I'm just so upset. And then he won't want to eat. And I'm like, well, it's because they're triggering you. He's like, what do you mean they're triggering you? And I'll have to tell him, I'm like, this is what would happen.
Hmm.
And then he's like, oh, I don't remember that. Well, of course you don't remember that. You probably blocked it out, Most
Hmm.
people, and there's a lot of things I don't remember from when the kids' dad and I were together because I just don't want to go there,
Right.
just a way of coping. But
Yeah.
I told him, I said, you have to, when those feelings come up, you have to really sit in them because I had to do that.
Yeah.
After everything was setting me off, somebody would say one word to me and it just have to be a word. And don't ask me what kind of word it was because I wouldn't know now. But they would just say a word and it would just hit me a certain way. Or a tone that they used would hit me. And I literally had to sit there and I'd be like, okay, they probably didn't mean or like, I'm probably taking it the wrong way. So I would just sit there. And first I'd tell my nervous system, like, calm down. Let's not overreact here because, that's what you get so used to doing when you're in an abusive relationship. Like everything's like just going at each other. And I'm like, don't react, just take a breath. What were they talking about? Okay, now why are you having this feeling? And I would have to search why.
Hmm.
And then be like, okay, well, is this person doing that? Are they talking about this? But it's just because something was like, hey, this is an area you need to work on, basically, is what I call it.
Hmm.
But you have to take a minute, just calm.
I have it's embarrassing to me. It's an embarrassing story of an outlet, like an outburst.
Mhm.
Because of that. Oh, thank you, Jesus. He forgives us and we learn. But several years ago, I had hired someone to do a specific, some online marketing things, just some things for my company, and um, he the way he talked to me in the passive aggressive nature
Mhm.
was like got something like welled up in me, and it happened a few times, and it was very passive aggressive, very. That, "Well, you did hire me to be the expert, but I guess you can do it that way," and things that probably wouldn't trip someone else up. They may just say, "That person's a jerk or doesn't know how to communicate or should think about a different way to phrase things because they want my business." But
Mhm.
for me, it was too similar to how I had lived, and in a moment, I was listening, and the next moment, I was yelling. I mean, I'm laughing about it,
Yeah.
but I'm laughing out of embarrassment, not because it's funny. And it was years ago, and yes, I did apologize and all of that, but I had this outburst reaction and had a lot to say to this individual, like, "Who do you think you are?" And da 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 da. And I'm like, "Whoa!" And it was so quick. What was that? I just remember being I mean, he was shocked, probably
Mhm.
because here's this tall redhead yelling at him. Probably doesn't happen to him every day. And then I'm stunned. What was this outburst? And I just said, "I'm really sorry. I'm going to take a minute." And I left and I went out to the car and I had to sit with it like you. I knew that was not about this person, though this person needed to be communicating differently.
Mhm.
But there was too many things that lined up and and I just didn't have enough healing yet in that area to hold back and work through it before I responded, it was up and out of me, exploding on this person in a childish, unprofessional way that left me going, I'm crazy. Who am I?
Mhm.
But I learned and I grew through it. And now I can confront something. So that was part of the area of growth for me because when I was married, I didn't have an ability to confront something in a way that would be heard, would be listened, would
Mhm.
ever be respected. So
Yeah.
either I did nothing and was batted around, or it was over the top to try to stand up for myself so I wouldn't be totally squished like a bug,
Yeah.
which even when I did it, it didn't work anyway. But the pattern was there. So
Yeah.
I learned out of that and I would practice in the mirror. I'm a
Mhm.
really big believer in however we're performing in life is based on what we're doing and how we're practicing and how we're showing up. So I would practice and then I would practice calling out a situation because I needed to find a voice that could be heard and communicated, not a voice that was either non-existent or over the top. So I worked till I found that voice. And I do it all the time now without even thinking. I'll just say, hey, I give people the benefit of the doubt, but I will just say, you probably didn't intend for it to sound the way it did, but this sounds really, I'm feeling like this is really passive aggressive. Can we just shift how we're communicating about this? People are always shocked. Even when you say it nicely, they're kind of like, oh, they get called on the carpet. But it changes the dynamic. We teach people how to treat us. My husband,
Mhm.
ex-husband now, but treated me the way he did because I taught him that was okay. I did. I
Yeah.
stayed. I allowed it. I sometimes fought back in it or I submitted to it. And there's all these reasons why I would behave or do the way I did, but it was okay. And if it wasn't, he wouldn't have done that or he wouldn't have been in the picture. So now I don't have anyone in my life who treats me that way. And I
Mhm.
have ended business, professional relationships, actually many business ones where I can tell it's crossing a line. And then I look at their other business relationships and I think, yeah, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to enter into a relationship where I have to always be on guard and we have to be working through this because this is this is like a part of how you operate in the world and teaching people how to treat me and also treating other people the right way too. But
Yeah.
it hasn't been easy. My gosh, it's been so much work.
Yeah. Imagine coming out of a relationship like that and you work for a toxic company who treats you just as bad.
I
I
did.
blew up. I don't know how many times I would sit there and let it fester and fester. It was so bad to the point that there were certain coworkers at work that'd be like, "Misha, don't do it. Misha." They all they have to do is give me a look because they knew I was about to lose it. Like,
Mhm,
it's just like, okay, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna breathe and I'm gonna
mhm,
breathe and
mhm.
but yeah, I mean, it's because you're just so used to like one thing happens and you're like, okay, and you ignore it. Or you don't say anything back because you're trying to keep the peace, and another thing happens, and another thing happens, and it's like they know that there's a buildup inside you, and they just keep going and keep going and keep going, and the next thing you know, you're just losing it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like a volcano, and then when that happens, you're the crazy
Mhm,
one.
mhm. Right, we are because we look crazy. Why did you explode like that? Why did you do
Yeah.
that? I was just trying to, and they become the victim. In a professional relationship, it might be a little different, but in a personal relationship, if you hold it, and then it's like holding a beach ball underwater. Eventually, it is going to come up. It will.
Mhm,
Not a single person on the planet can hold a beach ball underwater forever. And
mhm.
when it comes up, it bounces. It's going to hit you. It's like, and
Yeah,
that's what it felt like when I was married. We're trying to do the dance, trying to play the game, trying to stay safe, and then it would come up and in not a good way. I mean, in a horrible way. And then all of a sudden, I was behaving like he was, and he was the victim. How could you talk to me this way? Why didn't you just do this or that? And I was flipped upside down in my dryer, and I had no balance to be able to deal with like that specific situation. It was just confusing. And then all of a sudden, I'm at fault, and he's not talking, and whatever's happening, and I'm being punished for this explosion of back off. When people get suppressed long enough, We do not like to be stripped of our dignity, and we don't like to be dominated as human beings. God did not make us for that. We are not to dominate each other. We're not to be dominated. We are to be in communal relationships, harmonious unity, unifying relationships. And we just look at history. Governments are overthrown because of oppression, because people have been dominated. And you if you have a sensitivity to it, which of course I do because of what I've been through, when you find yourself in situations where someone is trying to dominate you in one way or another, if we haven't done the work and the healing to be aware of it,
Mm.
we'll never know why we react and do things the way we do, why we cut someone out of our life or make this decision or explode or go into hiding or do something irrational that might not even be with our mouth, because it's just revving that up again and we're trying to run from it or get out of it. It's hard stuff.
Yeah, I've learned just to communicate, and if they don't like it, then they're not meant to be in my life. And see you later. Like I'm just to the point in life where I'm not gonna try keeping people in my life,
Mm,
and I feel like that's what I've always done.
uh-huh.
I just hung on to people and not let them go. And so if I find a friend who will be fine with my communication, like if you hurt my feelings or you make me upset or you did something wrong or you cross the boundary and I tell you, and you're still there, then I guess you're still there. But I just don't tolerate a lot anymore.
Mm,
I don't know. But I also don't want to get stuck in the same situation.
yeah.
And that's how I always got stuck in the situations because I would just blow things off,
Yeah.
make up an excuse.
Uh-huh.
And next thing you know, you're in deep.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It feels familiar too.
Mhm.
I remember especially the first few years being out of my marriage that I would meet people and the chaos or the crazy making, even though intellectually I had learned and grown and knew it was wrong, internally it was comfortable because that's how I lived for so long. So
Mhm.
it wasn't a prefrontal cortex decision.
Yeah.
But that it was like, "Oh, I can handle this. I know how to do I know how to navigate this and
Yeah.
this type of chaos and this type of person, and I'm pretty good at it." And again, it wasn't a rational conversation, it was just a way of being, and so learning to recognize that and separate it out and go, "I am going to follow my brain. My heart is dumb. I'm gonna follow my brain. What does my brain know?"
Oh, goodness.
And and letting my logic actually make decisions for me and shutting off the heart feeling emotional component
Mm.
because that was wounded and that hadn't healed enough to make good decisions.
Yeah, that's so funny. My heart will start to try to make decisions. I'm like, "Excuse me. No, mm-mm. We're not doing that today. Do we
Uh-huh.
need to take a break? Because we'll take a break. Do I need to get you in check?"
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I'm
Isn't it
like,
amazing though the resilient spirit that God gives us? I hear your story, other women's stories, and of course there are stories from men as well or children who grew up in environments and the resilience, the ability to grow, to heal, to see, to learn, to understand, to make changes, to have a better life.
mhm.
It is astounding for all the trauma and damage that has happened to us and to people. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a point in time, Misha, where I was afraid of traffic. I was so anxious and nervous and panicky that anything that made me feel stuck would cause my anxiety to rise and I would wonder if would have a panic attack sitting in traffic. I couldn't leave. This was when I was married. I couldn't even leave my little city, my city that I lived in, unless I was with another person because everything was terrifying. And that's what happens. You know, anxiety as a result of abuse, it's a magnet and it just starts to
Hmm.
suck and take and grab and things gravitate to it and it sticks. And then you lose more and more and more of your life. And I would remember who I used to be and could not understand why I was where I was. I thought I was going mentally insane. I did. And that's what he wanted me to believe. And he loved the power and control over me where I was trauma bonded to him. The very first time I went to counseling, this trauma therapist, he drove me because I didn't think I could go myself. And he had to, this is just so wild to even say. When I say he, it was me through the trauma bonding. He had to park in a specific location so that I could be in my counseling session and see him in the car and know that he was there so that I would be okay.
Oh, wow.
I was unrecognizable of who I was before I met him, and of course, who I am now.
Mhm.
It was it was so deep and so entangled that no wonder it took me 8 months to even admit it from the start of the conversation. But it took 17 months prior to that of just working on trauma and anxiety to be able to get to a point to where I could see it, or I would even entertain the conversation. It was such a long road for me because of how interwoven even my parents were and family members were. And I was surrounded constantly by people, yet utterly alone, utterly alone. And there was every time I turned to just try to like, could this person maybe help me or explain what's going on, what's happening to me? It was
Mhm.
shut down. It was, here's what you need to change, or uh, you, you are this way. And so he is this way. And I wouldn't even be talking about our marriage, but it was, he had built a system to control my environment. And deep down, though, it wasn't a logical thought, or I should say it wasn't a conscious thought. I knew, my
Mhm.
soul knew, my system knew that if I was ever going to change, I was going to have to leave everything.
Mhm.
I think looking back, I knew it was never a thought I was thinking about.
Yeah.
And that is what happened when the court relocated us and I knew I had to leave. There was no way. I was in a situation going through my divorce trial and I had 5 family members testify for him. 5 of of my family members. The person who abused me and abused me secondhand through my children so that he could have the children. And there was no way out but utter like severing everything. Um, and it took 2.5 years to gain the strength step by step. It's like I felt like I crawled through the mud for every inch of freedom, for every ounce of healing. I had to fight for it. 2.5 years before I could like be free and leave and be divorced and all the things. And then the real healing started after that, once I wasn't trying to survive and navigate.
Mhm.
But the resilience spirit that God puts in us, how he shows up, how he helps us, providing people, providing like a resource like arms, just someone to help me for the long
Yeah.
haul. It, it saved me, saved my children, changed our family tree. It's amazing.
That's awesome. You just made me realize something. This is one thing I love about doing the podcast. I swear every podcast I learn something on either why I feel a certain way or something that I learn about myself. So I have a lot that goes on in my life and I get very overwhelmed to the point where I feel like I'm gonna have a panic attack because I don't know how I'm supposed to manage everything. And I never knew why until you told me that story about being stuck in traffic. Because when you're in a relationship like that, you feel like you can never get out and you're going to be stuck there forever unless you can figure out the outcome without and all the chaos. And I wonder if that's why every single time when so much is happening in my life, like I shut down and I
Um,
can't function and I
yeah,
get so stressed out, and I don't know, but I kinda wonder if that's why, because I'll have to sit there,
Yeah.
and then I take a breath, I calm down, and it may be a day, it may be a couple days, but, like, I take the time and I sort through everything and gather myself, be like, "Look, we've got this, we can do this, here's a plan." But I almost feel at the time like I'm just stuck, and I'm never gonna make it out of where I'm at.
Hmm.
That's kinda interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to remember that next time I'm feeling like that, be like, "No, we're not stuck anywhere, we are free. We're gonna do this.
Oh,
You have to stop whining."
but I do. I so relate to it. I so relate to it, Misha. So um, maybe this will help someone in your audience.
Mhm,
Being stuck is very. I don't use the word trigger anymore, but it is the hardest thing for me, and that could be any sort of stuckness, relational, overwhelm, being a single parent, all the things. It could be a physical stuckness. So
mhm,
I have had to work really hard to um, heal from some of that. I do not like small spaces. I do not love to fly. There was 4 years I would not fly. I'm not afraid of the plane crashing and dying. That's not the fear or the turbulence. It's being someplace where I can't leave because I
mhm,
spent so much of my life in that situation. I and even not being able to physically leave, physically being locked in a closet or stuck in a bathroom or like a small space where there was no way out for me. It's hard. I do not love elevators. Do I ride elevators? Yes. But sometimes depending on my emotional state or that day, I feel more vulnerable and I think, "Oh my gosh, if this elevator got stuck, I'd probably die of a panic attack." And
mhm,
other times I get on the elevator and go, "I don't like this," and I'm fine and just go up and do my thing. Because
yeah,
just depending on what's going on where we're at. But I fly all the time. I think I'm flying 3 times this month. So I had to work through it, right? I went from 4 years from not flying because I was so terrified to having to fly with people and only certain people. And then, but just walking out the journey. And I would tell myself, and I tell my kids this, like, we're a family who does hard things. We'll do hard things. And if it's hard, we're just going to do it hard. And I sort of pick myself up when it's hard. I'm like, it's okay that it's hard. Okay,
mhm,
this is hard. We're just going to do it hard. And I do it. And it things have gotten so much easier. Like I said, I fly all the time. Um, but there are other things where it just may always be hard. And I'm okay with that. I thought we spend a lot of time when we want to be healthy, working on our health and praying and doing the things we need to do, whether it's journaling, counseling, sand therapy, whatever it is. And we do it. But I got to a point to where I went, also don't want to focus my whole life on it because I've worked at it for
mhm,
several years and made big progress. I need to be focusing energy on other things as well. So if I would prefer to travel internationally with someone, I'm going to do it. It's more fun anyway. Instead of trying to get to a point to where, oh yes, I can fly to wherever and have no problems, by myself and stay in a hotel by myself. I don't love that. We traveled all the time. I traveled when I was married and a lot of bad things happened when it was just the two of us. And I was in places where there was no one who knew me and there was no one to reach out to help me. So what if I don't want to do that anymore? I don't need to make it a life goal that I will be able to do that and have no problems. If I do, great. If I don't, if I just want to rendezvous with a friend or a colleague, then I'm going to do it. And I've given myself the freedom to go, I've reached an acceptable level of healing and I don't have to be hard on myself because maybe it's not the same freedom that someone has in the same area.
mhm,
And I'm living an incredible life and other people can too. And we do the work, we do it hard, and we're okay with our imperfections and we're okay with our scars. And at this like not wanting to be alone in some other country is that's not damaging anyone. That's not the behavior where I needed to figure out so I didn't let something build up and explode on a person. That's damaging.
Yeah.
So that's not a behavior that I'm going to go, oh, it's just acceptable to live with because I've had some trauma. No, no. So we do what we can. And it's okay if we don't get all the way to where we think we should be. It hasn't inhibited my life at all anymore. Cool. I want to go on a trip overseas. It's specifically overseas. I'm going to go with someone. And why not? What am I going to do there by myself anyway? So I,
How are you doing anything alone? I can't even go to the grocery store alone.
like, we're made for community and companionship. Society tells us being strong and independent and I can do it myself and I don't need anyone. What a bunch of crap. What
Mhm.
a bunch of crap. That's not how God designed us or wired us. It's lonely, it's miserable, it's isolating, and it's not good for anyone. No, I don't want that
Mhm.
life. I lived that life when I was married, but I was still alone. No, no thanks.
Yeah. Mhm. Yep. Oh, goodness. Was
Mm.
there any other questions or anything you have for me?
I wanted to say that I love what you're doing. I love that you are a year and a half into your freedom journey in this way, and you're running after it. You're running after it for yourself, for others. You are being vulnerable. You're doing things that were hard to do. You're sharing about your story, things that you've shared privately with me. You have so much courage. You're courageous, and that's encouraging to me. And I hope that your podcast and video cast continues to encourage your audience and other people that would hear this, that they would be encouraged by us and by the stories to keep going. And God is faithful. It's incredible in 18 months where you are and how you think about your life and your children. And you're so thoughtful in your understanding in such a short amount of time. And it brings hope, so much hope. And I love that. And just like, just like I found hope through other people,
Mhm.
they gave me hope. Not, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't, I didn't need 10. God gave me just a few.
Mhm.
And I learned and I grew, and I do think that's why I've talked so much about her journey through the arms ministry, abuserecovery.org, because it doesn't cost anyone anything. It's free, and they can, if you're on Zoom, you can come in and out. You can go every day if you want. If you're like, I need support today. Where else in the world can we get support like that on a daily basis that we're not paying someone to support us? But we're getting truth and knowledge and counsel, things that you typically would pay for. And her journey is in it for the long haul. Uh, I sometimes I substitute teach for some of the teachers online that need to just take a break or they have a appointment that day. And I remember a couple months back, I substituted for three different teachers on on a Zoom class that week for recovery group. And I actually saw the same person in all 3 groups, and they were different days at different time zones because there's a lot of
Mhm.
offerings to just fit with what work for other women. And it encouraged me that she needed the support and she didn't care. They were all at different points in the program. It's 15 weeks, but it's a rolling 15 weeks. So you can join at any time. The last thing we want to do is put restraints on women who have had restraints put on them. If you need
Yeah.
to log in and keep your video off, do it. If you need to use an alias name for your safety or that's what makes you feel, it's okay. If you join once and we don't see you again for 3 weeks, fine, or 3 months or 3 years, or you do it consecutively for 3 years, you pop in that whatever you need to do for yourself, we are here to support. Never have I been a part of a ministry and organization that is that readily available for women who have been through trauma or who are currently walking through trauma, or who just want to heal. We have young people there, 14 and up, who have been
Mhm.
children of parents who have been in abusive relationships, who just, they need knowledge, they need words, they need language, and they don't have to talk. They don't have to share their story. We're not requiring that of them. So the anonymity it's protected, and it, it's changed my life. And this was 12 years ago. I went through the program in no particular order. If I had to miss a week, I had to miss a week. No one was calling me like, where were you? Why didn't you show up? And you really need to do this for your healing.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the life I was living. I needed something different. Um, So it's there and it's available for anyone who would want to plug in and use it, or if they want to go to an in-person, we would just contact the ministry through the website or call the office. It's on the website, and they're all trained and qualified and could just help.
Mhm.
So I'm grateful. I'm a product of someone helping, of her journey of being helped, and I just want to share that with others.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, and I'll link that website in with the video too.
Yeah, thank you.
Which is awesome. I'm glad there's something out there like that though.
Yeah, when it's the right
Uh,
time, it's there.
well, well, thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
If today's episode spoke to your heart, be sure to follow me and follow Silent No Longer so you never miss a new episode filled with healing and hope. Please share this episode with someone who may need to hear it. You never know the impact it could have. If you're ready to take the next steps in your own healing, you can take my free quiz to see if you may be in a toxic relationship. Schedule a free clarity call with me or read my story in Behind Closed Doors. Thank you for listening to Silent No Longer. Your story isn't over and healing is possible.